Hello and welcome to a special edition of Fake Ritual Ministries Investigates, Eluding the Devil's Grasp. As I'm speaking to you, I sit at a desk deep in the bowels of a maximum security prison in rural Illinois. It is now the permanent home/hell of the man next to me, Ronnie James. Ronnie was once a promising young white student athlete, a star quarterback with an equally dazzling report card, a fun-loving child who grew up in a happy Christian home, a daddy's boy who one day dreamed of following in his father's footsteps by taking over the family Fortune 500 company upon his father's death. Now he sits in handcuffs, a convicted murderer serving a life sentence at the age of only 17. How could this bright, popular young man be transformed in the blink of an eye into the Satan-worshipping murderer and probably pedophile that sits before me? Well, according to Ronnie, it wasn't him who was responsible for the grisly slaying of his entire family on Christmas Day in 1990, but actually was the work of the Dark Lord himself. Since finding Christ behind bars, Ronnie has renounced his devilish ways and wants to help others by spreading his message in the hopes that they might not fall into the same fiendish trap. Ronnie, thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks, Carter. My lawyer says this interview could look really good for me if it's played during the televised coverage of my appeal hearings. So I'm happy to be here.
I'd also like to welcome to the discussion Mr. Adolfo Q. McMartin, renowned child therapist, chiropractor, and author of 136 books including Satan's Childhood, The Pubescent Years, Television and the Adolescent Brain, aka Satan's Playground, and The Devil-Worshipping Chairman, One Man's Tale of Vindication and Revenge against the California Board of Psychology which disbarred him, based on a true story. He's also Ronnie's personal therapist and mentor. He says that by subjecting Ronnie to long hours of a psychotherapeutic interrogation technique, which he described as waterboarding, but with holy water, he was able to uncover deep memories of Ronnie's past that even Ronnie himself could not remember. Now, Dr. McMartin, is it true that many of today's teenagers have been exposed to the temptations of Satan by our debauched popular culture?
What you really need to ask me is it true that every single one of America's teens, and even many young children, are plotting this very night to sneak quietly into their parents' bedrooms wearing only their underwear and bash their brains in while they sleep with a sock full of gravel from the driveway?
Yeah, I guess that it is what I meant.
Well, the answer to your question is yes, and the reality is probably much worse, as I have a tendency to sugarcoat things.
Wow, that certainly is panic-inducing.
Indeed.
Greetings, all ye fakers, and welcome to episode 8 of Fake Ritual, the podcast, your guide to pop culture and the occult. I'm your host, Lucas Sloppy. So, we've been away for a little while, keeping silent in order to elevate voices besides our own. Make no mistake, Fake Ritual Incorporated stands with Black Lives Matter and any other organization that works to dismantle this world's fucked up control mechanisms. But we fakers must stay vigilant and always align ourselves with true freedom, not some factory-made version that denies the voices of those it's crushed under its weight. Fakers unite! And check the link in the episode description for places to donate. Now, on to the business at hand. This country of ours has seen its fair share of moral panics. America seems to thrive on projecting its fears and hatred onto the less fortunate. And on today's show, I talk with my friend Brandon Styer about one of the more recent witch hunts, the Satanic Panic. We play the part of experts and analyze the ins and outs of yet another fucked up page in United States history. Add it to the list, I suppose. Brandon and I dig deep into the infernal pits of our memories and extract demonic recollections of satanic babies and heavy metal rock music. And as it turns out, Satan's pretty cool. So buckle up and make sure you pack your Bible, your satanic Bible, that is. Here is the conversation with my fiendish friend, Brandon Styer. And I am sitting here with my good friend, Brandon Styer.
Hi.
Hi.
Lucas.
How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Since, making that unfortunate trip over to your house.
Yeah, poor Brandon didn't know we were experiencing a pandemic.
And I didn't realize that there was a pandemic, number one. I wish somebody would have told me.
Yeah.
And I didn't appreciate you just insinuating that it was because of my weed consumption. And really, you don't know the things that happened to me when I was a child that I'm just remembering right now.
That could be true, repressed memories.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, that's a perfect segue to our topic today, the Satanic Panic. So from the late 1970s to the early 1990s, a wave of fear swept this nation. Belief in satanic cults became an unquestioned certainty, fueled by an irresponsible media, an unscrutinizing justice system, and the rise of Christian fundamentalism. This satanic panic ruined the lives of countless individuals, those falsely accused of the ritualistic abuse of children. How did this happen? And that is for me and Brandon, two experts, to
That was
answer.
chilling, just the recap of that.
Right? That's
Panic.
According to the Satanic Panic, sometimes all it takes is a convincing paragraph.
Story, yeah.
So
Could be a
we both
sentence.
grew up in this time, born in the 80s.
Yeah.
What for you was it like growing up, kind of with the looming fear of devil worshippers?
It was, it was my only exposure to fear of Satan, really, as a kid that grew up in a house that wasn't very religious in any way.
Okay.
My parents would say they were Christian, but just to say that, we never went to church except for
Like with a lowercase
on
c.
Easter or some shit, we'd
Yeah.
go to church. But yeah, but my parents, especially my mom, was still really scared of Satan and devil worshippers, and I was too, just breaking into abandoned buildings as a little kid and seeing some older kids who had just burned candles in there and spray painted you're gonna die in a pentagram. That scared the shit out of me because I was so sure that it was real.
Watching these Christian videos we did for this show, they showed so much graffiti and so much of it was just so silly. There was one that said, "Go to hell." That's not
That's
scary.
not a spell. That's
my dad says that to the drive-through attendant.
Yeah, it's amazing. And
But so your parents were afraid as well?
Yeah, I mean, and like anyone else, they were just stimulated by the news and television at the time.
I say devil worshippers because that's what we always said. That was the phrase when we would sit around in my neighborhood and try to make up spooky stories. It would always be the devil worshippers back there. I hear there's devil worshippers over the train tracks.
Exactly.
I heard about devil worshippers down the street, and it really even still has the power to sort of send a shiver up my spine.
Yeah.
But I think even then I was a bit titillated by it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think everybody, that it's kind of that's the thing about it is that everyone is kind of wants to believe it.
When you get into the people making these claims and the people really boosting the signal during this panic, you realize they're almost getting some kind of this weird satisfaction from describing these horrible crimes.
And as we know,
supposedly committed on these children, it's this really it feels a lot like the Inquisition, witch trials.
Well, I mean, there's
sadism,
so many. Definitely, there's a sense of wanting to believe in it. Definitely comparisons to the the Inquisition, definitely, of course, the Salem witch trials, especially just like down to like, and we talked about this, you and me, but like the similarities of like the testimony of children being like the catalyst for the whole panic, both in the Salem witch trials and in a lot of these cases, you know, starting in the 80s.
Totally. It's like all of a sudden kids were worth listening to. Like, I love how convenient. Like, it really, they were the last people that actually had a voice in this entire thing.
Oh, yeah, and that's the other thing.
And we are definitely going to be getting into that.
Yeah.
It's probably just a good place to segue into, like, trying to figure out how this even started. Because people that know about the Satanic Panic have a general idea, but it is interesting to sort of break it down. And it does all start with that 60s, that goddamn 60s counterculture. All these, people sort of turning away from those squares at the church, and embracing all these different...
Oh, yeah.
Different ways of thinking. And they kind of, in a way, especially to conservative America, it all came home to roost with those Manson family murders.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, just like, that was just such a clear, like, everything they've been saying about the hippies was true.
Yes. That I never even thought about it that way.
And I'm sure,
like,
I bet Manson knew that too. I'm sure he, like, loved the idea of, like, making it seem like, because, I mean, like, they were trying to start a race war, but I'm sure he wouldn't have minded the idea of, like, society becoming even more polarized between squares and hippies also.
Oh, totally. But also, that dude was so fucking institutionalized, he really couldn't even fathom how big the world actually was. Like, he was living in his own little prison dreams of fame and mayhem.
But, I think he realized the power that embracing, helter-skelter and this, like, occult imagery to put over, whatever, just regular sadistic behavior you have. I think he realized, like, there was even more power in that than...
Yeah, it speaks to, like, occultism at large in what is my belief, that, chaos magic belief, as it were, that belief is a tool. And you really see that evident with the Manson murders, how he was able to shape this, like, longing for spirituality in these people without any sort of institution to really, like, tell them,
right,
how to be less of a murderous asshole, just like a regular asshole.
Oh, yeah. And like, I mean, like, a million things have been written about those murders, but like they were really grotesque, and they really left a mark on.
Yeah, and the Hollywood angle was another aspect.
For sure. Yeah,
that's where you start to get this notion of, like, maybe there's this inner circle of.
Also, they killed
Satanic,
a pregnant woman. There's like, there's always something, going on with that too. Just like the fact that a woman was killed who was pregnant.
Yes, like and which, it just left a mark and definitely planted in people's minds this idea of ritual murder.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming out of that too, you got Anton LaVey founding the Church of Satan. They didn't like that.
No.
They didn't like that at all. And that was its own reaction to the hippie movement.
And they were founded in San Francisco too, right? So, I mean, that's just so much easier to lump them in with the fucking hippies,
It is. He's like, it's like, when will the armchair conspiracy theorists just take a fucking break, like, don't, don't listen to them, listen to me, don't listen to that.
Well,
watch this internet video.
Something that, exactly.
Yeah, I know.
Research skills for one. But one thing that's like amazing about, and like very similar to like any kind of conspiracy and this like terror around satanic ritual abuse, which is like what we're referring to.
What we're ultimately getting to,
which they literally just started calling like sadistic ritual abuse. and
They
then
had so many
and then
fucking-
just ritual abuse, like because it became as it like gripped the nation, it slowly became like secularized, from what I understand. Like
Definitely, but that was still like this is also a good time to bring in that true rise of the religious right, the politicization. I won't be able to say it, but I'll keep it in.
Politicization.
Politicization.
It's cool. Like you can make yourself
of-
like just the same way that I'm just saying a bunch of scrambled random words, and you are editing it so that it sounds like I'm almost speaking coherent sentences. You can just
I'll
do
keep
that
my
for yourself.
politicization in though,
Yeah.
because I'm a masochist.
Ooh, that's perfect.
But a good
Well, I'm a sadist.
And
It's a
what's
match
that?
made in heaven.
Oh, there we go. That's why this is working. But you get, even in politics, I guess is where the term moral majority comes from.
The idea
Jimmy
that there's
Carter-
been this like just silent majority of people who've been putting up with these
Yeah, I think
hippies
that-
controlling the culture for the past decade.
It seemed that I grew up very evangelical Christian. I know this group of people. Not to say that they're entirely a monolith, but there is some trends,
Oh, yeah.
especially when it comes to politics. And I would grow up, probably it would have been in the late '90s, but I was still going to retreats, going to things, these big stadiums
Ooh.
filled with
Oh yeah.
people, praise and worship music,
Those
and it was
big
big, and it was
fucking
huge
churches.
production. Yeah,
Big
but these were more even
amphitheater.
like retreats.
Oh,
These
okay,
were
okay,
these were
okay.
at stadiums. These were like teen oriented,
Right.
and it
Pillar
was
playing.
it was still, they weren't necessarily full-fledged Satanic Panic, but there was definitely an edge of like, you are the army of God and you need to get out there and like make actual real world change with your beliefs. And I guess I half bought into it because I was a believer, but I was more concerned with like a personal, internal experience with the divine. And I think that eventually caught up to me. But yeah, this goddamn moral majority, they really bungled things.
Well, and like just like they bungled it, I kind of bungled what I was trying to say before about like it politically, but definitely there was, if you look at like kind of chronologically the like different moral panics that happened, right
Yes.
around another one right in the 70s there was a moral panic about crime. So there was the war on crime and everything,
you're
the war on
right.
drugs, these things kind of like, it's just like this like full-on moral war sort of like
Well,
kicked in. Definitely, mostly, like sociologists could speak to it better than us about like some kind of reaction to counterculture and
Yeah,
like the
totally.
debauchery showed in like movies like The Exorcist and what have you. Easy Rider.
Yeah.
Even though Easy Rider, I think, is the moral of that, like rednecks win, like always.
I guess, yeah. Bikers suck. Also, I heard in my research, I've heard it best put that after World War II, and then Korea, and then Vietnam, people were they were reckoning with like the nature of evil, because World War II was sort of the
Right.
last time it was so clear cut. It was so like,
It was,
we know who the
it was
baddies
easy.
are.
Yeah.
It was easy, and then in subsequent situations, we started to kind of question that, and there really wasn't these clear-cut lines. And I do
Korea got a lot
think
of money.
that
but-
could have put people in a position where whoever got to the mic first, in a sense, like, and commented on why evil shit happens in the world, kind of like people were just like, okay, yep. And that's how it seemed to be with this. They were just like, you know what? We'll take your word for it, because
Yeah, they were.
it's kind of how I feel about
crimes.
conspiracy theory in general, especially lazy conspiracy theory, where they just don't believe one thing just to so easily believe another without ever really trying to
scrutinize.
Well, one thing I meant to mention about conspiracy theories earlier that I got sidetracked, of course, but like, is there's the idea of, and we'll get into like the QAnon thing later, which is like just another extension of this, in my opinion. But there's like an adherence to the idea that there are no coincidences, and you really see that
Ever.
like they don't really say that much. They don't always say ever, but like they just no coincidences, or they'll like sign off online in chat rooms about like with no coincidences. And then it goes back way before, it's been in conspiracy theory a long time, the idea that everything is like connected, and like when you have that sort of mindset, you really do find the answers you're looking for always, and that's kind of what we see.
Confirmation bias machine.
That's what we see happening here, for sure.
Ronnie, you weren't always the aggressive, occult-obsessed teenager responsible for heinous acts of violence. You were once an all-star athlete and popular high school bully. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I was captain of the football team, MVP 4 years in a row. I worked my butt off, and I took a lot of hard hits to the head. And it's not only because I wanted to win, or because I wanted to be the best. Sure, those things are nice and all, but what I really wanted more than anything in the world was to hurt people. I wanted to see their blood and make them cry out in agony.
I was at your game against LeVay Central last year. You showed great hustle out there, son. Hell of a game.
Thank you, sir. Coach always said no pain, no gain, and I really took it to heart. That is, at least, up until I met Satan.
What made you end your athletic career? Some say you had a shot at making the NFL.
I'm glad you asked that, Carter. This is the perfect way for me to publicize my narrative. In the fourth quarter of the state championship game against Mercy Christ Catholic, on a totally bogus call, the referee, who I now suspect was already an occultist under the control of Satan, disqualified me simply because I tackled the other team's running back and then gouged out his eyes with my thumbs. So when I took off my helmet and broke the ref's jaw with it, I inadvertently sprained a knuckle on my throwing hand, and as a result, I could no longer throw a perfect spiral.
Oh, dear Lord.
Tell me about it. While I was recovering from my injuries under house arrest, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons with some dweebs I used to cheat off. Some of my friends down the street, and they pretty much began my obsession with violence and the occult. After that, I knew.
We got kind of the political angle of it, but there is a big old media angle.
Sure is. That's the juicy part. That's the real.
Is the juicy shit, and it really comes down to
meat of the
we gotta explain, and we gotta try to explain satanic ritual abuse. We mentioned it a little bit earlier to kind of tease the audience, but what the fuck was satanic ritual abuse, and how did the media get them all worked up into a frenzy about this?
It seemed to be that they sort of attributed pretty much every negative thing that your child or any teenager could do to satanic ritual abuse. And suicide, drug abuse, all of it was like sort of lumped in to that, under that umbrella, basically.
Yeah, an easy way to understand a very complicated, nuanced situation. And that's sort of where Michelle Remembers comes in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a book that came out in 1980. It was written by psychiatrist Lawrence Pazder and his former patient,
current wife,
Michelle Smith, and her claims of, he unlocked these repressed memories in her mind.
Right.
And this was taken as fact. This became sort of the... Pastor became a expert on ritual abuse like that.
Yep.
So,
and in the subsequent like kickoff of all these what do they call them, like the preschool or like child care like cases, there's a specific word for that.
Yeah,
but,
the child care and the
But all these like cases where people ended up doing real hard time for these bogus claims.
Oh my God!
A lot of these like therapists that were involved became sort of like the it people in their field of.
And this book was required reading for their quote unquote training courses.
Yeah, where they basically like Inception style put thoughts into children's minds.
Pretty much. So yeah, people took this and fucking ran with it. This is just a theme of the media throughout this entire panic. Is a complete and utter lack of scrutiny. Not even just mere sensationalism. This isn't like the yellow journalism of, the beginning of the 20th century. This is just pure laziness. They just let
in a lot of cases,
outrageous story drop in their lap.
I think in the case of at least the police early on, the police investigators who really bought into this stuff, I think they definitely, that has to be an accusation of laziness. There, I think for the media though, you can't imagine that they didn't see dollar signs immediately on this one.
You're right. This was the beginnings of.
So who knows what they really believed or didn't?
Totally, this was the beginnings of that confusion of entertainment and
fake
news.
This was fake news, man. This was
stuff like 60 Minutes, 2020, NBC Dateline. They. Appeared to be...
What did you call them? You said
covered this
magazines?
on last... news magazines, they're called. Yeah, I covered this last episode on Unsolved Mysteries with Erica Adamson. Be sure to check it out where you get your podcasts.
Do it.
We were talking about NBC Dateline, and NBC made Unsolved Mysteries put a disclaimer at the beginning of their show saying, this is not a news broadcast. NBC Dateline did not have a disclaimer. 2020 does not have a disclaimer. 60 Minutes does not have a disclaimer. In my opinion, they all should have disclaimers because they are not news. They're a big part of this panic and of the current situation where big swaths of people are very bad at discerning between opinion and fact, objective, subjective.
Research.
They always were focusing on, this was another time we're kind of coming out of a serial killer era. You got Charles Manson, but you also got these other serial killers that are really having these satanic leanings. Son of Sam in the 70s, claiming to have been told to kill by
his dog.
A neighbor's dog.
Dog.
Ended up being total bullshit, that he was just kind of using that to...
Yeah, didn't he admit that he was just trying... I think he was trying to plead insanity or something.
And then he converted to Christianity, so did fucking Ted Bundy, because...
So do
it's a final fuck you, so that they can not only do a terrible thing, but can also feel like they've been, absolved. And then you also got Richard Ramirez in the 80s.
The Night Stalker.
That really, the Night Stalker, always flashing the pentagram on his hand. Such a cool name, but, as someone that has dabbled in Satanism, what a fucking lame-ass Satanist.
Did he ever even say he was a Satanist, though?
Yeah, he would flash that pentagram on his hand. Remember that picture of him?
I thought it was just because he was wearing that AC/DC hat.
No, but that was, that's... they have a song called Night Stalker. Or it might be a slight change of it, because I believe Ramirez coined his own name. He might have wrote a letter to the newspaper and be like, call me this.
Seemed like the type.
But yeah, they're definitely trumping that stuff up. And then,
how could you know?
Like we were saying, you get...
Bad guy. The Night Stalker. I just want to put that out.
Oh, yeah,
I know I said his name was cool, but...
Yeah, that's
not a good guy.
Not an endorsement.
Not pro Night Stalker.
Yeah, that dude died a while ago.
Good.
But I think in 2007 of natural causes. Cool. Isn't that? Oh, great.
Hey, that's... hey.
But then you also get... have you ever heard of the Adolfo Costanzo case and or the cult that he was a drug dealer in Mexico as well as a cult leader and a black magician.
Right.
This story got a lot of coverage. when of course he had killed all people in Mexico, but as soon as he killed an American out on spring break, blew up. But
people die in Mexico all the time, Lucas.
Yeah. But this one is wild. When you find the pictures, the dude had this cauldron that was like filled with human skulls, and like he was a legit like using black magic to facilitate his drug empire. Ended up dying in a shootout with police, and like it's a gnarly
using
story,
real guns, not magic guns.
Yes, using real guns. Yeah. What a fucking lame. But this sort of set the ground for this huge panic that did not go without victims, but they were never the victims of satanic ritual abuse. They were the victims of sensational media and a lazy justice system. And I definitely, we talked a little bit about that McMartin preschool case where kind of the false testimony of children being coerced into kind of
pretty much like just like the perfect follow-up to Michelle Remembers.
Totally.
That was in 83. The book came out in 1980, and then in 1983 the
enough
children...
people would have read it by then.
Right, yeah.
But the McMartin preschool thing is so fucked especially when you hear the claims that the kids were making.
Pretty much. I mean, Lucas, there's so many that I actually haven't even had a chance to look into them. I'm lazy. But
do you remember any of the McMartin claims?
Yes. One of them that they killed their rabbits, the kids' rabbits.
I think there was like witnessing of blood sacrifice. They claimed to have taken rides in hot air balloons.
Ooh.
They claimed that there was an intricate tunnel system under the school, which there wasn't. And the number one that really blows my mind is they claimed that kids were being flushed down the toilets.
Ooh.
In order to reach these underground tunnels. Children were being flushed down toilets. Have you ever seen the toilets in like an elementary school?
Have you ever seen the toilets in that building, that particular building?
That's true. Maybe there. Can you imagine the toilet it would require to fit a child?
Well, I don't know if you've seen.
That would terrify me.
I don't know if you saw Mr. McMartin, but a large man.
Yeah, giant asshole.
And it was the accusations were mainly against the grandson of like the school founder.
Yeah, he's the one that kind of had to fight it the longest.
Yeah,
it's so fucked up.
These longest at the time, the longest
and most expensive
case in American history. And then they just dropped the charges.
Oh, classic! They did that with the West Memphis 3 as well.
Yeah,
these 3 teenagers that were accused of murdering 2 boys. I can't remember where. West Memphis. Wow. We're leaving that.
I thought maybe that was like a thing, like a little joke. I thought that was a joke. I thought it was a good one.
I'm funniest whenever I'm done. But yeah, these 3 teenagers just very easily sentenced to life in prison.
Ooh, so easy.
/ death row because of this frenzy. People just couldn't get out of that logic loop of like, when the devil's trying to deceive you, you don't want to change your mind.
Oh yeah.
You have to believe that you are on the righteous path. And if you second guess it, I mean, growing up, there was a degree in my church, the churches I went to, of like, they never fostered doubt. They always wanted to crush it. They didn't want too many questions.
Oh yeah. I mean, that goes, without saying, it seems, in this case. I mean, it's like, or in all of these cases, there is just, again, like to touch on, like there's almost like a need for this to be true.
Yes.
No matter what. No matter how little physical evidence there is. And like all of this stuff is all based on, hearsay, like witness testimony.
It really is that desire to explain evil in a very simple way. And not to mention that these fears were definitely, and this is not there's a fine line between saying that fiction causes people to do things.
Mm-hmm. And whether people's actions cause fiction. I mean, it's both.
Yeah, but there is something to be said of the string of horror movies, largely from the 70s, that sort of they got people scared.
Oh yeah,
and I think horror movies. Yeah, it's just they don't usually elicit the actions you would imagine. And definitely segueing into pop culture and the big influence it had on this entire scare, you gotta talk about The Exorcist. Right. I really, growing up, my mother, she won't even, you mentioned the name of the film and she will always tell you that she doesn't like that movie and it is way too scary, and her Christian ass now knows it's real.
Yeah, that's one thing. Just to touch on, especially for people who are very religious, I think that movie really holds a place in their mind that, to them it's almost real. And the William Friedkin, who made The Exorcist, who wrote it and stuff. I listened to an interview with him once where he was talking about the movie that he made after The Exorcist called The Sorcerer, which really, isn't scary in that
it's
sense
like a fantasy
at all.
Or something?
It's not really a fantasy. I don't really understand exactly
what a
who
waste
the
of a cool name
is.
for a movie.
It's a great Lucas. Watch The Sorcerer.
Oh, it is?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Great movie.
Cool.
It's scary in its own way. I mean, you could find out for yourself who the sorcerer is.
Okay, yeah.
It's supernatural than The Exorcist. And he went, I forget, it takes place in South or Central America, and he also filmed on location in Mexico and Central America, and I think maybe some islands in the Caribbean. I can't remember, but a lot of places where people are majority Catholic, and going down there to film in these not in the major cities in Mexico or in Guatemala and all this. I can't remember where it was. Clearly, I'm not an expert on Central America or this movie.
We are experts. We are
experts.
As much of an expert as
I am an expert.
These fucking court cases had.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that.
Just all you gotta do is put the quotes. Right. As in, I'm just saying it.
Right. I'm just saying. Yeah, I am saying it. To myself, I'm an expert. But Friedkin said that people down there, they hated him. They thought he was the actual devil for making
because of The Exorcist.
Yeah. So
whoa.
Talk about not being powerful.
People are always talking. What this really brings home for me, people are always talking about kids' inability to separate fantasy from fiction, and they're always citing it for. They always cite it to explain why kids do bad shit, and it's such a cop out because it's so simple. It's way bigger than that, but this is where you really see oh no, that's adults that do that. They really struggle with that. Kids don't, they don't know better.
Kids.
Adults do.
One thing that adults should know is that kids are stupid, but apparently they don't, and they just believe them. When they make accusations that send people to life sentences in jail.
Well, even that was, when you hear, just how they coerced them, it was at a certain point, they just had to give any answer.
Oh, yeah. You see that, you see that in a lot of...
Move on. Back to The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, too, it's funny how my mom, you can't mention Ouija boards to my mom either. And I think it's from this movie. This movie made what was otherwise a party game into a fucking conduit to the hellscape.
The most interesting thing about it, I think, is I didn't find it very scary.
You don't find The Exorcist very scary?
I'm not scared of it. Yeah, I'm really tough and brave. Yeah, didn't shake me at all. I did know that about you. Yeah,
I'm when I watch horror movies, I try to get scared.
Oh yeah, no.
That means I gotta squint my eyes or put my head between my legs so I half pass out.
Yeah, I'd like to choke myself so that I'm semi-conscious, so that I actually believe it's real.
Yeah. Have
almost choke myself out and then.
But yeah, you got also, you got Rosemary's Baby. You got The Omen.
Yeah.
Shit like that.
Rosemary's Baby.
Great movies.
Does that predate The Exorcist? That's before The Exorcist.
It does predate. It's from
Exorcist.
68.
Yeah.
It was definitely coming in right on the heels of that.
So, yeah, I mean...
It's like Sharon Tate was murdered a year after. Like, that's really what kind of adds that in. Rosemary's Baby's ties to Roman Polanski.
Right.
And then Sharon Tate and the Manson murders.
Baby thing.
And then his subsequent, like, fucking statutory rape. Like, being a total fucking creep.
Yeah.
In what seems to be like a very
right. It just all ties
immoral
into this
dude,
immoral...
at the very least.
Yeah, this story of immorality.
Exactly. It colors it.
Absolutely.
But God damn if these movies ain't good. Like, I love a satanic scare movie. They're kind of my favorite horror movies. You add that.
They're the ones that give you like the little chill in the back of your neck, Get a little.
Yeah, I think it's maybe from growing up
It's
in
like
this
the
time.
ominous nature, the slow pacing.
Yeah, that's true. It was a good era for that as well. That slow burn horror.
And before we like really move away from The Exorcist, I do want to mention, in referring to a conversation that we were having the other night with Meg, she mentioned like Exorcist and The Omen, and a lot of these movies where there's a satanic child or demonic possession. A main theme is a single working mom.
Totally.
Which, once again, is like sort of the antithesis to the moral majority.
It was kind of preyed on that fear as well.
Nuclear family.
Yep. Yeah, trying to save that nuclear family.
If your dad's not in the picture, who's going to stop your family from being taken over by Satan?
Yeah, if you don't got a dad, the devil's your dad. And I'm like, well,
all right. I mean,
if only.
Probably have better musical taste.
Yeah, and
my dad.
I mean, Satan is my daddy, but that's a whole.
Right. That's another episode.
So Ronnie mentioned Dungeons & Dragons, which for teen is a direct gateway into the world of Satan and the occult. Heroic organizations like Toad are raising awareness about this game's dangers. So, Dr. Adolfo Q. McMartin, are you ticked off about Dungeons & Dragons?
I am quite ticked off about Dungeons & Dragons, and about a whole lot else. You see, many parents of today's young people don't realize that their children might be especially susceptible to the evil temptations of Lucifer. My team of researchers has identified several of the key demographics of teens most at risk. Those are as follows. Children from broken homes. Children with happy home lives. Teens. Tweens. High school dropouts. Members of the honor roll. Red-headed stepchildren. Regular stepchildren. Rascals. Little rascals. Children who like candy. Children whose name includes the letter S. Children of the grave. Children of the sea. Children whose parents just don't understand. Children who listen to music. Children who bite their fingernails. Overweight children. Underweight children. Weightless children. Even alien human hybrids. And the list goes on and on.
Wow, I'm shocked, downright appalled. Thank God for the Bible. It sounds like something straight from a children's story, but there's no way that could be made up.
So movies, they fucked people up. They got them all primed. They got them all scared because they're all a bunch of dumb babies. But you know what else got them scared? Heavy metal rock music.
It really, really did. They didn't know what to do with it.
They didn't know what to do with it. That Geraldo Rivera the Satan's Underground, that special he ran in like '88. This one, it was a big deal. That and I feel like he's best known for that and for his boring ass reveal of Al Capone's vault.
Of Al Capone's bunker, which,
What the fuck? Geraldo Rivera sucks. But yeah, he has Ozzy on this special. And Ozzy is just like, it's so perfect. Just Ozzy being like, I don't know. They're like, what do you think of all these suicides that are happening with these kids listening to your music? And he's like, well, I don't know. I listen to that. Like, they knew, they're like,
right,
we get Ozzy on, we win.
Oh,
like,
we're gonna roast him.
Like
he's gonna agree.
They didn't
to
want Alice Cooper on
say.
there. Alice Cooper.
No.
Alice Cooper could talk. They don't want Rob Halford on there. Because
no, they don't want somebody on there talking. They want somebody who's like blasted their mind.
You get Dio on there, and
Ozzy.
You're gonna be converting people to fucking Wicca.
Exactly. They got to get the dumbest one, and they got Ozzy, who's like also like maybe the most famous one. Also, he's the one that bit the bat's head off.
I love that fucking.
What could be more satanic?
But what it was like, he didn't know. They threw it on stage.
He didn't. He thought it was
fake.
He says he thought it was fake.
He probably wasn't thinking. It's just you're on stage and you're like, okay, like you at least aren't like, this is definitely real, and I'm putting a real bat in my mouth. But that would be a moment.
He probably wasn't on drugs.
Can you imagine that moment of like, I'm gonna bite it.
Realizing you have.
You remember that story about the chicken that got thrown on Alice?
I think it was a pigeon.
Pigeon, but.
Oh, yeah. Well, Alice Cooper was the chicken.
He
ripped a chicken to shreds.
They threw it on the stage. He threw it back.
He threw it back. The crowd ripped it to shreds.
Can you imagine? That's a sight from the stage. That's when you want to be on stage. My God.
That's why people get into rock and roll.
For real. Or if you're Ronnie James Dio, you get into rock and roll because it's your fucking destiny. Because you read it in the stars. I was just jamming some Dio today.
Is he not a Christian? Is he a Christian, Dio?
No, I think he was like a pagan. I honestly think he was. Him and I have on this list as well King Diamond, who's a self-proclaimed Satanist. I think it's Alice Cooper that's a Christian. He became Christian and wrote a book about golf.
Really? Well, I know he's like at least like a...
But I was jamming Dio today with Erica, who you can see on last week's episode on Unsolved Mysteries. Check it out where podcasts can be found. I'm trying to get better at that. I was just listening to Dio really and just being like, this is what they thought was delivering satanic messages to children.
Right. It's the goofiest, most like theatrical
and
shit.
And it's sometimes like kind of like beautiful. He talks about like starscapes and rainbows and and like he's just such a little witch. He's not even like back then they conflated it all. A cult, satanic, witch,
again,
devil worshiper. It was all the same. But I'm like, Dio came correct.
He had a great falsetto.
Oh, he's just got dynamic range, and just like motherfucking Rob Halford, Judas Priest.
And the thing that's just so dumb, like these fucking idiots trying to figure out, metal music and why they're like the real issue is like metal music as opposed to like punk was like real popular with suburban kids.
Yes.
And like they're like expressing their like angst and anger over living in like our crazy ass
and
society.
Also dealing.
And our parents are like, what the fuck?
Well, this idea that like you listen to music that is about suicide and you commit suicide. Like, no, you're probably listening to you might commit suicide, but it's not because that music might have saved you a couple nights. The music's
probably helping you. Yeah, it's probably like other people listen to this and they know what that's about.
Like, all right, wow. I'll keep trying,
Also, the other fucking like stupidity of these people, like you hear like in one of these interviews I watched with these like truly batshit fellas, like he was talking about how like Freddy Krueger is like the hero, like Nightmare on Elm Street. Like Freddy Krueger is like the hero of that movie, and like Jason, and like all these like Michael Myers is like the hero of Halloween. Like no, he's fucking not the hero.
I honestly, I think I might have to agree with them because I watched those movies for those killers.
Well, yeah, but like
they're missing the point. They're saying hero. It's like no, he's still the antagonist. He is not.
You're still scared
of him.
Also,
the movie isn't positioning him as the hero. The movie is clearly signaling to you that these creatures,
Could you
these
be any more of a
beings are
villain?
evil. You know, it's never like, oh, this is a Jason movie where it's like, yeah, he just kills a bunch of teens, and it's like very sweet and
Yeah,
fun.
the one thing I will like, Jason, maybe it's a little bit sympathetic towards Jason because
That's true.
That's
true.
But like Freddy Krueger, like
No, he's a
come
child
on,
molester.
like,
Fuck him.
Child
Yeah.
molester and then a child murderer. Like, I don't think like really he's like that. Kids were like, I want to be just like Freddy
Also,
Krueger.
yeah.
No, they were fucking scared of Freddy Krueger.
God damn it. God damn these people.
That's
Well, yeah,
what I
and
mean.
speaking of goddamn can't separate fact from fiction, that was all you heard about. The big deal during the Satanic Panic. One game to rule them all. Dungeons and Dragons. They were scared shitless of this nerdy game, which I just played today.
You just
I just played
from
today.
doing
I
this.
love Dungeons and Dragons. I was told to be afraid of it growing up Christian. When you play it once, and it's like, it's even sillier than thinking Dio is evil. It's like,
Right.
it's such nonsense.
This and like these like one like this interview with this guy that killed his Sean Sellers, this guy who killed seems like just some random person that was a clerk at a store of some I forget, and he also killed both his parents.
He's just a murderer. He's just a
while
piece
they
of
were
shit murderer.
sleeping.
Why am
He's
I
just
going
a
to believe
fucking
anything he
murderer.
says?
But he's in this like fucking interview with these quacks, and he's like talking about how like one, he doesn't know any other people who are into the occult and Satan worshiping who aren't also into rock and roll, and
Hell yeah.
And in this interview they just keep hitting on the fact that he used to be like a star football player
Yeah.
and like a good athlete, and
How
like we were
could-
talking about this before, just the idea that like this kid that you brought up to like just 24/7 be thinking about just like crushing
And also
his
not think for
schoolmates and,
himself.
like,
You're like, no,
Right, not think
you
for
run
himself.
the ball. You take ball and you run.
he thinks about violence all the time.
Well, so he was probably,
Throws kids into trash cans and stuff in the hallway. Those kids were the fucking real evil that I witnessed when I was in high school. I was on the football team
that's what they
for
say.
a few
It's
years.
like with
It was they were
It's
evil.
like with Columbine. They tried to put this fucking like this nerd narrative, but it's like, no, Eric Harris was
Right.
a bully.
Those kids
He
were
was
aggressive.
A fucking,
Yeah.
and he was popular. And I knew people like
Yeah.
him where you're like, you are popular and you're definitely psychotic. Like, you're definitely a dangerous individual that I would not want
Absolutely.
to be in a room with. Like, it's the quiet kid, it's like, I feel like they're like nerds tend to be a
but
little
it's
more
the-
depressive than
Right.
outwardly violent. But this whole thing comes down to like, you don't even want to paint with broad swaths. I might have to check you on the jock
no.
comment because I'm like, well,
All I'm saying is just the fact that they kept commenting
like as if
on,
that's some sort of
just like, how could this football
like,
player
oh my
become a
God.
Satanist? It must have been because of when he took up Dungeons and Dragons.
yeah, I'm sure he was
Like-
real fun to
that's,
play with too.
That's where he got his aggressive tendencies, is from like it just came from playing Dungeons and Dragons. That's all I meant from
Word.
that. It's just a very funny kind of like. It's just a bit
Yeah.
ridiculous. The idea that it could happen, and
Well, we're coming out of Dungeons and
We're
Dragons.
talking about
gonna
Dio.
let me
Dungeons and Dragons. You got to talk about Dungeons
Well,
and Dragons, man. That's,
we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons here, but also this is just kind of Dungeons and Dragons is indicative of kind of the whole approach to this thing, where it was like a lack of understanding. Like, how when your parents say something you like and somehow even them pronouncing it sounds wrong? Like, they just... My dad used to say the Ramones, and it always sounded wrong. It's the simplest name.
it sounded like he was saying the Ramones, even though he
it's just
wasn't.
how he would emphasize the syllables, and it really just seems like that... It's that made nightmarish. It's that made into some sort of, like, fever dream. And just kind of it makes you wonder, like, is the Satanic Panic over? Like, is because sometimes I feel like the paranoia seems to pervade. I mean, I'm sure 9/11 kind of distracted for a time, but we really seem to be living in a time where conspiratorial thinking and a lack of critical thinking, a lack of being able to self-doubt and a seeking of truth, and that we're living in, which is pretty scary. And you were saying earlier when we started the episode, and you were telling me about QAnon, which I am still not quite sure of that entire conspiracy theory.
I don't think that they even are.
So related to how do you think that? Because I thought that was an interesting point. You kind of saying that's a very good. It's analogous to the satanic.
Well, so like a lot of this stuff is all just like more. You could say like, you could make arguments probably that there's like some form of satanic panic that was before this also. I mean, we were talking about like the hippies.
Oh, you're even we went back to the Inquisition.
70s serial killers.
There's
the
panics
Inquisition.
are almost
right.
They're like pandemics. They will happen.
And the other thing is that conspiracy theories are like that also, and they really mirror a lot of the same thing. And one thing about like the and one thing I just want to touch on that you were just talking about, like your dad sounding really uncool and like when he's trying to pronounce their names, like that's like the like Jenkum, the Jenkum thing.
You mentioned that, but I don't.
Like a text. It was for your listeners, if they don't remember.
Fakers out there, I haven't called them by name yet. Hello, fakers, listen up, because there's some truth about to be dropped on y'all.
If you don't remember Jenkum, it was this like once again just another like moral panic, maybe even more so based on just complete media sensationalization
they just
from the
ratings
media.
Above
and but just like the idea of like basically Jenkum is something allegedly it was kids trying to get high by shitting in a jar and then allowing their shit to ferment in a way that would like get them high. Totally never happened.
Does it work though?
Probably made up by some adult.
I mean, as much as like methane is
probably try it out.
Probably depriving your brain of oxygen.
I don't think people. Yeah, I don't. I don't really want to find out personally.
So I guess I'm asking the wrong questions here.
If it was good, I would have tried it by now.
If I know anything about you, it's you'll try anything.
I'll do anything once. Yeah. And Jenkum, I thought about it, and then I heard it sucked. So, and also
that's the real. That's the real clinch.
Yeah, that's what stopped me.
That's the real one that stopped me.
But that thing, Jenkum, like completely, just sort of like made the rounds. Then after that, of like just this thing that like people made up and then got scared.
Yeah, this
also. Yeah, like that's sort of like this like making stuff up and then like scaring yourself with it and yeah, that was like that is considered like another moral panic, like the Jenkum thing,
wild.
Like in the I don't know mid 2000s or something like that. But then with the QAnon thing, the comparison like specifically one thing we really didn't touch on is like just the sort of like link with pedophilia that goes along with these accusations of like satanic.
Yeah, this rise of also like stranger danger throughout the 80s, this fear of a stranger hurting your child, whereas it's actually more likely to be someone you know.
Right. And as they say, as I've at least heard, like the Satanic Panic thing sort of started out with a broad swath of people who believed in it, police investigators, Christians, Christian fundamentalists, talk show hosts, people that really pumped it up. And Oprah, and then later, and then later, it kind of like became more secularized, like we were saying, and they started calling it satanic ritual abuse, and it kind of like split off into like more of like a Christian fundamentalist direction, a like stranger danger sort of thing in terms of like law enforcement and the justice system, like still this idea, you know, that your children are in danger from this other. But one claim I think that was made, you know, like during the Satanic Panic was that like there's like something like 12,000 child abductions or some shit like every day by these like satanic ritual groups. I don't know if you like heard something
false
like
statistics.
that. But that's like a claim, right? But that's like a claim that these like QAnon folks. QAnon is basically a like conspiracy theory. Seems to be like tailor fit for boomer dads who are racist.
Yeah.
And it's like really, I mean, Pizzagate. You've heard of Pizzagate.
That came from the same.
That's exactly like, and the problem is it's like very fueled by these very real, this very real and crazy shit. I mean,
Satanic Panic did the same
about,
thing. Real serial killers
about,
claiming to be Satanists.
Right, and like in this case, one of their obsessions is Jeffrey Epstein and like his very real like child sex ring.
Yes, yeah.
And that's like kind of what the Pizzagate shit came down to.
That's how
also.
They do a little bit of truth.
But a thing like that is huge is these people, these QAnon people who believe that there is this person Q who has some high government position or something on the inside who's trying to take down the deep state, which is like the FBI and like Hillary Clinton or something. And they're going to right, exactly. And so every so often Q leaves these cryptic messages that could be interpreted pretty much any way because they're so vague. So like they can always be wrong. There's always like something about to happen. He makes all these predictions and they never come true, but it doesn't matter. So he's in that way it's like very much like doomsday prophecy. But they believe the exact same sort of stuff that these people in a frenzy about the Satanic Panic believed, which is that these child sex rings basically run by the elites and the Clintons who are in cahoots with like Jeffrey Epstein and stuff like that. You know, based on like very like some very real things. They believe that like you are being that children are being abducted like in the tens of thousands across America by these Satanist
which just
pedophiles.
pisses me off because it proves that they are more concerned with being right and being seen as like intelligent. I don't know who made them feel dumb throughout their life to give them this complex, and they're not concerned with actual children being harmed because if they would, then they would be trying to be super discerning in their approach to possibly, like, I wouldn't say I don't believe that there are like like people that have a lot of power like to do really fucked up shit because they need more power.
Adolfo Costanzo did exist.
Yeah,
you know?
like
he did.
So they're running a disinformation campaign they're helping the people that they claim to be fighting against, and that's what makes me angrier than anything. And they make any conspiracy or any sort of thinking in that way, because to me, conspiracy comes down to, what do they say? Read everything, believe nothing, believe none of it.
But except they believe fucking everything. That's within their conspiracy.
It's like, no, you're supposed to.
They're not skeptical about anything.
They ruin it for people that actually have some good points and some things that we probably should follow.
Jeffrey Epstein really does have a private island with a weird shrine.
Something was going on.
What's up with that?
Whether he killed himself, whether he was allowed to kill himself, whatever, something. But they already muddied the waters, and it's like, way to go, guys, way to go. Truth seekers, huh? But... So, QAnon, child sex rings, that's where we're going to leave it.
Child sex rings, Satanist
pedophiles.
That's what you got to watch out for there, folks. Not any of the other problems plaguing our society. It's the Satanist pedophiles, and it always has been.
Yeah.
Once again, I want to thank Brandon for all his help with this episode. His was the mind that brought you
Fake Ministries Investigate, Eluding the Devil's Grasp.
Thanks again, buddy. I look forward to more. Fake Ritual was recorded and produced by me, Lucas Sloppy. This episode's music was provided by episode 6's guest, Johnny Arlett. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fake Ritual and on Twitter at Fake Ritual Blog. Please leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to be on the show, you want to collaborate on a project, or you just want to tell me what to do, you can email us at fake.ritual.inc@gmail.com. Once again, check the link in the description to make a donation and help those who may not be able to help themselves. Thanks again for listening. May the fake be with you. Always. Toodaloo.